Hello everyone, welcome to Coffee with Penny. It is our first episode in over a year, sorry about that. In case you didn't know, I actually went back to college, so I have been pretty busy. But hopefully we can get back into doing these, and if you didn't know, this is the first time tuning in, Coffee with Penny is basically our weekly witchy chat about all things in the pagan community. Today I think we're going to talk about incense and censers. Go over some of the tools of the trade, and I guess we will begin with, let's do joss sticks first. So these are joss sticks. Some of them are more natural and some of them are less natural. These are what are considered combustible incense. This means that if you light them, they will burn on their own and they don't need anything else. This is usually due to a plant called mako or mako. It basically allows the entire incense to combust by itself once it's been lit, and then you have non-combustible incense, which are your resins, herbs, the kiffy that I make. All of these will not burn without an external heat source. And generally that is in the form of a lit charcoal. There are lots of different types of charcoal. You can use ones that need to be lit with like a furnace or an external heat source. Most of the ones that I use are just lit by a match or a lighter. Joss sticks are one of the oldest types of incense. A lot of them are basically masala type, which means that the herbs are blended and then they are made into a paste and then wrapped around the stick. A lot of the sticks are then dried and then dipped in an essential oil or in a perfume oil. You do have to be careful with that because there are a lot of synthetics that are used, and it can be very irritating, particularly for people who have asthma or emphysema. I don't generally recommend people using incense if they do have those conditions or if they're on oxygen, but everyone has their own particular practice and people can decide for themselves. Some joss incense are very natural and they're basically just made with the herbs and natural oils. Some of them are still dipped in like an essential oil to make them smell more intensely. I use joss sticks pretty often, especially if they're like outside and I can't have like a charcoal, or if I just need to be a little bit more discreet with it, or if I need something that I can easily put out, especially if I'm outside. Especially in Colorado, we do have that threat of wildfire, so you do have to be very careful with it. But joss sticks are pretty easy to control and it's really easy to put them out. These are a particular kind of joss sticks. These ones do not have a bamboo stick. They're just the herb put into a little form and then dried, and it just burns like that. Grab my lighter. Okay. And they are much bigger, so you do have to find an incense holder that can hold them upright. And these are also combustible. They will burn on their own. And I'm going to hold it just like that. Alright, other kind of forms of joss sticks are these ones. These are coal. They are very similar to the non-stick version of the joss sticks. They do not have a bamboo rod in them. They are just put into a form, and they are very, very delicate. Anything without that sturdiness of the bamboo is going to be very delicate. You generally do have to have a special incense holder for them, and you can find these online or in quite a few incense stores. Co is becoming very popular here in the West. It tends to be much more natural. The herbs and resins used are much higher quality than you'll find in a lot of joss sticks. And it burns really, really cleanly. And you don't have to figure out what to do with the stick afterwards, because I know a lot of people have a whole bunch of these little sticks lying around and they're like, well, throw it out? I don't know. For most joss incense, an incense holder like this will be fine. You basically just take a stick and put it into the little hole, and it holds it above the ash catcher and allows the joss incense to burn. Moving on to non-combustible incense, you have powdered incense, you have amber resins, you have raw resins, you have Neriko, which is a honey-based rolled incense, and then you also have Kiffy. Kiffy is the kind of incense that I make. I also make powdered incense. I sell whole resin incense, and I also do some Neriko. Neriko are particular incense because they do have to be aged, and they are based in honey. Kiffy is also based in honey. It's a honey, wine, and raisin or dried fruit base, and then you add the powdered incense to that. You also have sage bundles. You can also do, this is one that I made myself. It is desert sage. You can make them out of cedar, you can make them out of cypress, sweetgrass, Palo Santo. All of those are really, really good non-combustible incense that are very traditional. You do have to be careful with what they are wrapped in. I wrap mine in natural hemp cord. It burns really cleanly, it doesn't leave any kind of weird residue, and it's a lot better for people who have sensitivities to dyes or synthetics. For most non-combustible incense, you're going to want something a little bit more heavy duty. Brass is probably my favorite. You could also do shells if you have sand in them. You could use stones. This does get quite hot. So you do have to be very careful with what you're setting on because it can burn things. As for the shells, do not use this without sand. The only reason I don't have sand in this is because I was burning sage. Sage is basically, to ash it, I just kind of tap it off like you would a cigar. But if you burn something directly into the shell, you will break your shell if you are not careful and do not have sand in it. So raw incense, raw resins, or any raw material, could be herbs, could be roots, burn really, really cleanly. And basically all you have to do is just set it on the lit charcoal and it will ignite and burn and smolder, and that's your incense. It is one of the oldest forms of incense, and it's something that's still used all across the world in all sorts of ceremonies. There it goes. Catholic priests use it to cleanse their altars and to cleanse the church. It's used a lot in Nepal and all over Asia, and I really like it. It's one of my favorite forms of incense. It burns really, really cleanly. There's no additives. You can be very sure of the quality of incense that you're getting, and the scents are really, really powerful. Neriko and Kiffy are a little bit more subdued. They can be very powerful as well because the powder is resin based, so any resin based incense is going to be very, so smoky, is going to be very, very intense. It's why I often recommend breaking these into thirds or fourths to burn them, otherwise you're just going to get a cloud of smoke and you might set off the smoke alarms, which is always a challenge. Amber resin is an interesting one because essentially it is a masala because it's a mix of different resins and usually different herbs, different oils, but it sometimes contains synthetics and you do have to be careful of that, but it will burn in a way that I have never really experienced from other resins, and it is very sticky. The thing about amber resin is that you can use it as like a solid perfume, particularly if it's a really nice natural one. and these tend to be quite sweet. They are very potent, so very, very small amounts will do a lot. As you can see, it's tripled the amount of smoke that I just got. It's just fumigating. But you do have to be a little bit more careful with these because they can contain a lot of synthetics, and that is very harsh to the mucous membranes. It's very harsh to your lungs. I only really use ambers when I need my house to smell really nice, or I need like some intensive cleansing. Then I'll kind of box everything in, fumigate, and then let the door open. Powdered incense can also be quite strong, but they don't generally tend to be quite as strong as a raw resin. I really like powdered incense because you get a little bit more bang for your buck. A lot of powdered incense has resin in it, but it's also mixed with herbs and roots and bark, which helps the incense last longer. And that's how that burns. And what you have to remember with any kind of incense is that the amount of wood in it is going to lengthen the burn time. So joss sticks with the bamboo are going to burn longer than the ones without bamboo. Powdered incense are going to burn much longer than a simple resin. There's just more to combust, it lasts longer, and I think a lot of people really prefer them because you do get more bang for your buck. But it kind of all depends on what you want out of an incense. I really love all incense, and I've been making incense for a long time, and I've experimented with all sorts of incense. But I have to say that resins, powdered incense, kiffy are much easier to consume for me because I do prefer something that is more natural, something that burns a little bit longer and doesn't have the synthetics. And when I'm making incense, I can really control that as opposed to just buying something out of a store. Like these, I really don't know if these were dipped in synthetics or if they were just dipped in oil. It's really hard to say unless you do a lot of research and really get pretty in-depth with your incense companies. Most people will never know. So you can tell a difference only by how they burn and like how they smell, but that takes experience and time, and I don't think most people would really know the difference. I didn't for the longest time. For the longest time I just got joss incense and that's all I had and that's all I did. All of them work really, really well. They're very effective for what they are, and I know a lot of people are very much against sage. I will say that a lot of white sage is something that you have to really take care of with and make sure that you are getting it from a sustainable, reliable source. But otherwise, I don't see any harm in getting these products. I don't see any harm in burning these products. I work with a lot of Native Americans, and we are always using smudge sticks, and I've been given lots of smudge sticks to use for my own personal practice from Native Americans, and I think as long as you're doing it with the best of intent, with good knowledge, and doing your research, making sure that they're not being resourced from a non-sustainable place or being poached, I think it's fine. I think anyone can freely burn whatever they need to burn and whatever they like to burn. And if you choose to use the word smudge, that's fine too. I think a lot of people are getting caught up in these semantics of, oh, this word is owned by a certain person. Well, it's not. We can freely use language, and our language is always adapting and always changing, and I think it's really important to honor the roots of where that comes from and to honor where these products come from, the traditions that they come from, and learn about them and really understand them. But practices are made to be adapted, and they are made to change, and the more we know about a culture or a people or a tradition, the better we can understand it and the more respectful we can be. What I find is the least respectful thing is to segregate ourselves from it and to not talk about these things and to not allow people to learn about our ways and to forbid ourselves from learning about other people's ways. I think we live in a very globalized society, and we are going to have this connection. We are going to have to learn about all these different cultures from every aspect of the world and be able to appreciate all of those differences and bring those into a context where we can all feel free to understand these things and bring them back home. Make them a part of ourselves so we can love them as these people love them. And that is something that I wish I saw more in the world, because joss sticks are not a traditional practice in Druidry. It's not a traditional practice in most things, except if you come from the Middle East or India, places where they have traditionally made these. But we use them, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with using them, but we have to be educated in how they are made and what we are consuming, because that's essentially what we're doing, is consuming these products and giving our money to people who maybe are exploiting their own traditions or exploiting other people's traditions. And that's the problem. So the more we know and the more we learn, the better off we'll be. Okay, I think that about covers it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. You can also reach out to me on any of our social media. We have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have Patreon now, and we will be developing more of our Patreon as the weeks go by. We're still not entirely sure how that's going to work, but if you're interested in being our patron, make sure that you head over to Patreon. The link will be in the description below, as well as the link for all of our social media. You can reach out pretty much at any time, and we are happy to answer any questions. And if you have any suggestions for other topics that you would like to see us cover, we are very happy to do so. We also have a free educational group on Facebook called Weavers of the Web. Make sure to check that out. It's pretty great. And yeah, I think that's all I have for you, so I will talk to you later. Thank you. Bye.